One of the pieces of software we're going to be using this semester is Cisco Packet Tracer. It's a very powerful tool, and it's recently, probably in the last 2 years, become free and open to the public. The only requirement is you do have to have a Cisco Netacad login to be able to use it, because it does call back to make sure that you are a valid user. To get there, you're going to have to come to this website, netacad.com/courses/packet-tracer. There is a link in the course, so you should arrive here. And what you're going to do is you're going to come in here, you're going to go into the Introduction to Packet Tracer course. This is a course that you do not have to complete. This is just how we get the software. But at the same time, if you find this software interesting, I highly, highly recommend you work through this. It's still a Canvas course, so the layout and everything like that should be familiar to you. It's free. There is no cost for this. It takes about 10 hours to work through everything, and it's all self-paced and you can work through it yourself. But what you want to do to be able to get the software so we can use it for a course is you come in here and do sign up today. You'll go through, fill out the form, you know, your email, your country, answer your I'm not a robot question, things like that. You'll create an account. And then once you've created the account, you'll go through the verification with the email to make sure everything's good. You'll come back to the site and you'll log in. And you'll log in here with your email and your password. And when you come into this course, what you're going to see is you're going to see an Introduction to Packet Tracer, English, 0821B, whichever is the current version is, because they keep updating it. And then you'll go ahead and you'll go into Launch Course. And in here, again, this is pretty straightforward. It walks everything through. I mean, it's a newer version of Canvas, but it's going to walk you through everything, reading all the chapters and doing all the exercises and things like that. But for this course, what we want is just the software. So come down here to Student Support and Resources. And scroll down here, you're going to get Packet Tracer. Download and install the latest version of Packet Tracer. And come down here, it's going to tell you all these different classes that they offer that it's useful for and things like that. But come down here to the download section. It's going to tell you what your requirements are and stuff like that. There is a mobile version of this for like iPads and stuff. From my personal experience, it doesn't work very well, so I would highly suggest making sure you use the desktop version. There's Windows 32 and 64 bits, Ubuntu if you have Linux, and a Mac OS. So it's available on a wide variety of platforms. Most people are going to use the 64-bit download, so just download this file. When it comes, save it to wherever you're going to do it, and then run it, and you're going to install Packet Tracer. And when you run Packet Tracer for the first time, you're going to get this login screen. And I apologize, my capture software is not capturing the entire screen, and this login screen will not reduce in size, so we're missing a part of it. But you're going to come in here, you're going to enter the same email address that you used at the other page at the Netacad. You'll hit Next. The other thing that you don't see on the screen, but down here in the bottom left, there's a thing that says keep me logged in. And if this is your own personal computer, you want to check that so you don't have to go through this login process every single time you have to go use Packet Tracer. And just enter the same email you use for Netacad. There's one thing I do want to address before we get too much further, and that's backwards compatibility with Cisco Packet Tracer. Anything that's done with a newer version is not backwards compatible. So if you do something like right now, if we go up here and we look at this one, we have Cisco 8.0.0.0, 212. If one of you, I have to update my own, but if one of you did some work in 8.0.1 and saved it, and someone else tried to open it in 8.0.0, it's not going to open. It's going to not be backwards compatible. Things are forwards compatible, so if you did it in 8.0 and tried to open it in 8.1, it would work, but it is not backwards compatible, so just keep an eye out for that. You usually want to be on the newest version as possible. Just go into the Netacad and check for the new versions. They do update it about every 2-3 months. So in here, this is the actual main interface of Packet Tracer. You have a couple different things. This is what we call the logical layer, this main screen. That's where we're going to do most of our work. There is a physical layer that's new with version 8, where you can actually look, this is simulating the map, the city, Inside the city, you can go into the office. Inside the office, you can go into a wiring closet, and you can see all the stuff as you rack the hardware. So for example, like if I go back here and we add in, you know, a router, we add in a switch, we come back to the physical layer, you can see it's actually added all this stuff into a wiring rack for us. It's a cool new feature in 8. It's nothing we're going to be using in class, but it is something, if you go through the course, it will be something that they explain a little bit more for you. So it's a pretty cool little idea. So up here, the first couple things are, there's a select, and you just select everything. You can hit delete everything. There are shortcut keys. If you hit escape, it's going to go back to the select tool. This is the inspection tool. Again, delete, you hit the delete key and you'll see it'll change to the delete cursor. This right here is a text, so you can do a label. This is useful because this is a palette draw tool. So what you can do here is we can come in and set fill, you know, like yellow, and we can actually draw a box and we can group things together. And then if we want to do another one, say green, we can do another green box over here. And then we can go back through, and if you want, like, you know, put a label here, you can also cut and paste. You know, Control C, Control V will work, and you can, you know, put the labels at the top of the box, in the box, wherever you want. This is very useful when we start building out networks and saying this is the first floor, this is the second floor, this is the IT closet, this is the workspace, you know, things along those lines. So very useful tool. One of the other things that is useful, I know for some students, the 8-point font is very hard to read. So if you go up to Preferences, and then there's a font, and in here you can change up to, by default it's 8. I have mine set for 10, so that things are a little bit easier to read. If we go back here, you know, and we do, we set this all this stuff back to 8. You see it becomes a little bit harder to read because everything's smaller. But when you get into larger scale networks, it might be useful. I just know some people definitely like the larger font. When making videos, I definitely like putting it up larger so people can clearly see. So the next thing is down here is we have all of our equipment. So we start here. The very first box is network devices. And then below that we have routers and switches. We got hubs, wireless devices, firewalls, WAN emulation, stuff like that. We're not going to be dealing with any of these really. We're not, you know, we might use a home router for the wireless device, but for the most part, we're not going to be dealing with hubs. Hubs are outdated. You'll be learning more about that next week. WAN emulation, we can get into that a little bit later, but for the most part, we're going to be sticking with switches and routers, and over here, end devices. So for the example right now, if we want to just, you know, come in, we want to add a PC into this, and then add a second PC, we can just drag and drop. The other way you can do it is you can click here, and then just click where you want it. So you can do it whichever way you see best. The other thing that we're going to do is in here we want to configure this type of stuff. So we've got all this, all these different add-ons. If you click through each one of these, you can see they're different types of network cards that we can actually put in this computer. And here's a network slot down at the bottom. So what we want to do though to install that is we have to turn off the power, hit the power button, drag the card out, and then find the card that we want to replace it with. You know, do we want to use the Cisco Gigabit Ethernet module? Do we want to use the fast Ethernet module? Do we want to use the copper Ethernet? In this case, you know, let's use our gigabit. We drag it, put it back in there, turn the computer back on, and it's all set to go. So the other thing we want to use in here is there's a config tab, but I highly suggest you don't use it. The only thing that you may want to do here is just call it like PCA, and you can relabel that stuff. So then as soon as you click out, you can see it's now PCA. But all your configurations, I highly suggest using through this tab. So you want to use like IP configuration. So like PCA, we're going to make an ad hoc network. So we're going to start with 192.168.1.1, and you hit tab, and it automatically recognizes this as a class C network, and it fills in the subnet mask for you. Subnet mask and all that stuff we'll get into in the TCP IP chapter, and you'll understand why that's all useful and usable. So then we just go ahead and close this. Let's go into this other PC. Let's go in here. Let's go into the IP configuration. Give it 192.168.1.2. Again, just leave that subnet mask alone. We're not worried about DNS servers or default gateways yet. We'll get to those later in the semester. Right now, again, we're just trying to get these two computers talking to each other. Oops. So if we want to look at these, we go in here. We're going to look at this one. We saw already that its IP address is 192.168.1.1. And we come in here and we go to the command prompt, and let's say we want to try to ping that. Ping 192.168.1.1. And we try to ping it. And what's happening here is there's no response. It's going to give us timeout. And what we can also do in Packet Tracer is we can fast forward. We can hit this a couple times. Boom, boom. Each time you hit it, it jumps ahead 30 seconds. And you can see this is all completed. And even though we have the IP address programmed in for PCA and PC1, it's not working because the network interface is not up because there's no cable connected. So what we're going to have to do is come down here to the lightning bolt, and this is our connections tab. And here we have a couple choices. We have the auto connect, we have console, copper straight through, fiber, or copper crossover, fiber, and then T1s and stuff along those lines. These are a little bit more that we're not going to actually get into this semester, but they do exist if you want to test stuff. But what we're going to need to do is connect these with a crossover cable. You can use the lightning bolt to automatically allow it, because if you see here, look, it automatically made the dash crossover. The problem with that is using the automatic thing is, like, say we got two routers. Let's put these out here. Let's turn these off. Let's add in T1 cards and turn it back on. Let's do that for the other one as well. Turn it off. Add in the T1 card, turn it back on. So then we got router 1, router 2. So if we hover over these, you can see we have gigabit Ethernet ports, which are 1,000 megs, and we have T1 ports, the serial ports, which are 1.5 megs. They're a lot slower. But if we use the automatic connection and we just connect these two, it's going to default to a serial connection, a T1 connection at 1.5 megs. Even though we have a gigabit connection that we can establish between them, it's giving us this. So we try not to use the automatic. It does make things a little bit easier connecting like a PC that only has one viable port to a switch. But when it comes to networking equipment, you want to actually select the right type of cable. So again, to highlight, just like this, delete, and they're all gone. So now if we come back into PCA, command prompt, we try to ping ourselves again, and look, this time we actually get a response. So then if we go 192.168.2, you can see we're actually pinging across to the other machine. So that covers, we're adding equipment, shows you how to turn on and off the equipment, add cards to it, how to connect the stuff together, and a couple of the different functionalities there in there. There's some other things like switches that we're going to be using later in the semester. And these have a command line interface. So these you're actually use the CLI command. And you can see right here, this is booting up the switch. We'll hit fast forward a couple times. And you can see the switch is ready to go. Hit enter. And we're going to start going through, and we can start programming all the switch, which we'll be working on next week and the week after. So that'll show you how to do all this stuff. But that is the other command that you're going to be using in the other tab. So let me just go ahead and delete that. The last thing I want to show you is, now that we've got these two computers together and we were able to ping each other, we want to actually look at the OSI layer and see what's happening. So Packet Tracer has this great thing called a simulation mode. So we go over here, we hit simulation, and you can see here we've got all this stuff. Right now there's nothing here because we haven't done any commands, but the one thing I want to draw you to is down here. If you notice, the time of the network is paused, 15:31:8:10. It has not gone anywhere. And we come into PCA, we run our ping command again to try ping to the other side, and you notice as soon as we do that, nothing happens. We've issued the command, but the network is paused, the simulation has. So what we can do is, if we put this, let's see, let's just get rid of this for a second. And you can see here, we've got a little envelope in the ICMP, and you can see here, we've created the ICMP. And then we can step through the simulation, go to the next step, and you can see the packet go across to PC1. And you can see it here. Pass it back there, pass it. And you can see them going back and forth. And then the other nice thing about the simulation is, like, if you want to see this right here and see what's happening between, let's look at the return packet from PC1 to PCA, the response to that ping. We click on this, and you can see what's happening on each layer. Layer 3, you can see the source IP address it's coming from, what destination IP address it's going to, what source MAC address it's coming from, what destination MAC address. And you can go through, and it'll walk you through and tell you what each one of these things are. And then so if we go back here into this one, you can see here we got source.1.1 going to 1.2. And here's the source MAC address, and here's destination MAC address. And you can see, and then here's coming back in, you see it's the source address to the destination. So the request, the response. And you can go through and it'll walk you through each layer. So it's very useful. We'll be digging into real-world examples with Wireshark starting, I believe it's either next week or the week after, and we'll actually be able to look at those frames and see all that information. But in the meantime, you can come in here if you're trying to remember the OSI layers, 7, 6, 5, 4, and then 3 for your IP, 2 for your MAC address, and 1 is your actual physical electrical signal connectivity. So it's a very useful tool. And again, you can hit play and it'll slowly go through the entire simulation and go through. You can see check mark means, hey, that's good. Nothing bad's happened. And it'll slowly go through, or you can step through with the backwards thing. So it's very useful, very powerful tool. You can see why Cisco kind of wants to have control over this. But it's a very, very, very useful tool, and we'll be using it throughout the semester. And then to switch back out of simulation mode, we just go back over to real time, and everything's going to be back up, and we're going to be pinging stuff in real time. So that's our quick rundown of Packet Tracer. I highly encourage you to play around with this tool some more. We're definitely going to be using it a lot more throughout the semester. Run through that Cisco course if you have the desire to learn more. Like I said, there's a lot of information there. If you complete that course, you may even know more about Packet Tracer than I do. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the forums, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Hopefully you'll find Packet Tracer to be an extremely useful tool to be able to visualize your network and see the traffic flows between all the different network devices throughout the semester. Thanks. Looking forward to it.